You are critical in our efforts in creating this environment of safety. This training video has been produced by Children's Advocacy Center with National Children's Alliance funding, and we say thank you for that.
I wish there were no hit zones when I was a kid, because I got hit in the grocery store, in parking lots, in the mall, at school, at church, on the bus, in all of these various kinds of public spaces. And there was nothing around my adoptive mother that said this was wrong to do this, or it's harmful to do this to your child. As a kid, I would just look around and there would be all these other adults sort of standing by and staring. I had to interact with hospitals because my adoptive mother was extremely abusive. So I usually ended up there because of some kind of injury. And I didn't have the voice as a kid to say, this is how I got this black eye. This is how my wrist was broken. This is how I got the scars on my face. This is why my nose keeps bleeding all the time. My adoptive parents were middle-class people, very religious, very polished people, not the kind of people that you suspect would abuse a kid. And so the signs were missed back then.
The concept of a no-hit zone basically came about in 2005 at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital in Cleveland, Ohio, out of staff and visitor concern of witnessing parents inflicting harsh physical discipline and verbal discipline to kids, so yelling at kids or hitting kids. And so staff came to supervisors and said, look, this bothers us, but what can we do about it? Hence the concept of the no-hit zone.
A no-hit zone to me means that this is a safe space for children. It also sends a signal to parents that we're encouraging them to look for other means of discipline.
The essential part that I see as important is it's raising awareness among staff that can then be communicated that violence is not is harmful and is harmful for children.
A no-hit zone is an area, a safe space, where we know that no one is allowed to hit at all for any reason. Children can't hit parents, parents can't hit children, children can't hit other children, and adults can't hit each other.
This gives us a no-hitting zone model to train people to understand their feelings and their experiences, to understand the science and the facts behind saying no hit in this place, but also to respond in an empathetic way which supports families with alternatives to hitting. And that, yes, children may have behavior problems, yes, adults may have behavior problems, but what do families know about responding to that? Not every family knows what to do in its absence. Now we have staff members who know how to respond, and not in a punitive way, but in a helping way.
It raises questions. You're 7 years old, and you ask your mom, what does that mean? What does it know? It requires mom to articulate to you what it means.
First of all, establishing a no-hit zone enables us to educate people who are in that space. And so it is a way of spreading the seeds of nonviolence. I think that that's really important. Secondly, it makes sense that in a place that's dedicated towards safety, health, wellness, that we try to do things that keep people safe and well and healthy. And hitting them doesn't help them. In fact, we've seen that hitting has a lot of negative side effects.
So in studying corporal punishment for 15 years, I've discovered several things. There have been a lot of research studies about corporal punishment of children. And what we know now is that corporal punishment is not linked to any positive outcomes for children. We know that it's not effective in teaching children how to behave appropriately, so they don't learn any appropriate lessons from it. We also know that they become more aggressive over time, which makes sense because parents are using aggression against children to get them to behave. Children learn that lesson. They learn that they can use aggression to hurt other people and get what they want. And so children become more aggressive over time. But we also know that children who are corporally punished develop more mental health problems over time, things like depression, anxiety. We also know they have more difficult relationships with their parents. And unfortunately, corporal punishment puts them at risk of being physically abused by their parents.
We know not only is hitting detrimental to children in so many levels, mentally, physically, but it also leads to impulsivity. A lot of times someone may start by thinking, I'm disciplining my child, but discipline quickly gets out of hand. And before you realize it, you fatally harmed your child.
Being assaulted physically does change the brain, and I think that I don't want to spend a lot of time with parents explaining the brain chemistry and the genetics, because it also changes the way your genes function, believe it or not. But I want to explain to them that it can have serious consequences in the development of the child, and that if they would use other forms of discipline that are not physical punishment, I think they'd be much better off.
We know that it impacts their brain development. We know that it can initiate a fight or flight system within their brain.
Corporal punishment really only leads to negative risk and harm for kids. We really have no studies that show that hitting kids is good for them, either in the short term or the long term. We know that hitting kids makes them more aggressive, makes them more likely to be involved in dating violence when they're adolescents, can impact their health and well-being as adults into adulthood, physical health, mental health. We know that as kids it can have an impact on their mental health and can even impact their relationship with their parents and really undermine that trust.
One of the things that I have discovered as a child abuse pediatrician is that fear of corporal punishment often serves as a barrier for children. Children are less likely to disclose very concerning things such as bullying and child sexual abuse to their parents for fear of physical discipline. I have had the clinical experience of examining and evaluating children, and I've had several children tell me that the reason that they didn't disclose sexual abuse was for fear of being whooped by their parents.
Many people use the phrase, spare the rod, spoil the child. They assume it's in the Bible. That exact phrase does not appear in Scripture. It's a paraphrase of Proverbs 23:14.
And I think sadly many in the world have eisegeted that scripture, taken it out of context, and used it as justification for beating children, just as slave owners used to eisegete a scripture, slaves obey your masters, and use it to justify slavery. So holy books can be used to justify the most inhumane treatment of other human beings.
Dane County's No Hit Zone initiative. That means no hitting or spanking of any kind is allowed.
The goal of the program is to reduce injury to children, teaching culturally responsive, positive parenting methods to replace corporal punishment.
And this no-hit initiative, this empowering of our employees, this is allowing staff to actually bring in prevention into the traditional system. It is allowing our staff to actually act in a manner that could get in front of the problem.
It's also a little bit like no smoking campaigns, that certain areas are declared off limits and then it spreads, the idea that this isn't a good thing. So the no-hit zones are important themselves, but they're also important as seeds for a message of not hitting the little people in our lives in general. We know that it doesn't work for parents to say to their kids, don't hit your sister, okay? So we don't hit a child to teach the child not to hit. Similarly, if we want to teach and support and help caretakers to not behave in a punitive way with their children, we also have to not behave in a punitive way with them. In a sense, we're modeling what we're wanting them to do. So we're supporting them, we're speaking with them, we're recognizing that what they're doing is difficult. You can point to the sign and you can say, you know, we don't hit here, but let me help you out.
Approach that parent with a different emotional tone and way. And to reach out in kindness and in compassion, but also with clarity that, hey, this isn't what we do here. We help children here. We don't hurt children here.
Just explaining that it's a policy, not that individual judging that parent, that's really valuable. And that's what the staff told us after the no-hit zone was put in place. They said, you know, I never knew what to do, but now I can say that there's this institutional policy behind me so that I can intervene and say, we just don't allow that here. Just like a no smoking zone, we don't allow smoking.
Okay, I need to de-escalate the behavior. I don't need to threaten the person who's doing it. I need to educate the person, and I need to protect the child or the adult who is the victim of this.
Are you okay? You know, it looks like, you know, this might be getting a little stressful for you. Or you know what, your kid has just been so patient, and I know that you're asking them to do so much, even at such a young age, and they're doing so good. You know, just validating, yes, you know what, we see that you're stressed, but is there something that we could do to help?
No-hit zones are immensely important. I would love to see them everywhere in all those public spaces so that it reinforces the message to folks that this is harmful. So it's not just having the signs up, but literature that educates folks about the physiological and psychological harms of hitting children.
We have access to multiple resources. So if you approach a parent that has, say, a toddler, you can grab the toddler sheet and very simply hand it to the parent, explain, oh, we have a no-hit zone here, but these are some resources, some simple things to say, to do, things not to do and say. And if you want to go one step further, you can turn it over and develop a plan with that parent. In addition, the parent might choose to take this home and do a pledge to no longer hit their children, to stop the harms of hitting.
People who have suggested new approaches have encouraged what's called, instead of time out, they encourage time in, which is the idea that what you really want to focus on is connecting with your child. So you want to perhaps begin, it could be holding the child or touching the child till he or she calms down, and then slowly begin talking with them about what was going on, tell them why their behavior wasn't acceptable, what they were doing was wrong, but you do it in a calm, loving way where you're communicating with the child and he or she can actually hear the parent.
Talking calmly, explaining to the child what they need to do or what just happened, having some consequences for them, giving them a chance to try again to get something right, and giving them alternatives. Those are kinds of things that people can do to manage children in frustrating situations.
So I probably talk to parents about spanking every day because it's such a common discipline method, and I don't think parents even realize the harm they're doing. And so I think they're grateful to hear that they could be causing harm because they don't want to do that.
Families really are eager to have somebody to talk to about the difficulties of raising children, someone who acknowledges how difficult it is to raise a child and really helps them come up with some reasonable alternatives besides corporal punishment.
Trying to educate a parent about normal child development. This is normal for a 4-year-old, and this is how we deal with normal behavior. And do you want to be hitting for all normal behavior of your kid for the next 20 years?
The root of a lot of hitting in public places is the parent is afraid of being judged for the child's behavior. And so they want to show the world, I know this is wrong and I'm in charge of it. So we don't want to embarrass them or shame the parent. There's no need to do that. What parents need is support and understanding. So children and adults are no different. The way we learn is through support and safety and understanding and communication and information. So that's how we teach children, that's how we can help parents as well. So rather than judging the parent's behavior or embarrassing or being in some way punitive, that doesn't help adults either. What all of us as humans need is understanding.
An important thing for any parent is modeling. So right from the beginning, if you expect your child to behave, you have to behave. But a lot of it is giving your children choices that you're willing to accept whichever choice they have. It's talking to them quietly, it's taking them aside, Sometimes it's letting them play things out, for instance, temper tantrums. If they have one, they'll quit at some point, so just stand there until they're done. Don't give them much attention and then move on.
You talk with parents, one of the things they're most concerned about is my child's going to have a tantrum in public or at the supermarket, and everyone's going to think I'm a bad mom or a bad dad. And the power of diffusing that by saying something like, wow, he must be too, or this is really hard for you, or something that shows some empathy can really diffuse that, because it shouldn't be embarrassing to have a 2-year-old who has a tantrum. It's just, that's what 2-year-olds do.
I really think that we can shift the consciousness in our society, and that sign that says this is a no-hit zone is that reminder that no, it's not okay. We sometimes even playfully tap other people, but trying to just bring that level of awareness that no, this is a safe place.
The time has come to stop corporal punishment, and that begins by drawing a line in the sand. So at your hospital, at your faith community, at your school, at your business, you can be part of that change and say, no more. Not in this property. We're not going to allow violence. And that could be something everybody has the power to do tomorrow if we choose to.
I think every parent wants their children to be successful. So I think if we can spread the message that violence impacts the ability for children to be successful as they grow, I think that would make a very big difference in the world.
It seems to me it's the keystone. If we can get people raised without violence, we can reduce the violence in the family, then we've got a much better shot at having a peaceful and nonviolent society.
It would have, given me a better sense of self-worth. I don't know, maybe more courage to speak up to other adults who could have helped me when I was in a space like a hospital. So when I was in the x-ray room alone with a tech, I could have maybe said, she did this to me because I saw a sign outside your door that said this is wrong. So I don't know, I fantasize about what could have been as a kid. But here I am now as a grown-up and using my voice and tools and programs like this to hopefully help another kid not have a broken wrist, scars on the face, and some of the pain and degradation that I felt as a kid.
Each and every one of you play a vital role in not only preventing child physical abuse, but also explaining to parents the harms of hitting, how ineffective it is, and the unbelievable mass of effective alternatives. Thank you for being a part of the solution to protect the children we serve.